So who here is on Facebook? Right? Not right now, but in general. So I'm sure many of you have received invitations from your friends to join Farmville, or as their description says, grow and harvest beautiful crops on your very own lifelike farm, right? So on a Farmville farm, you're under constant threat of accidentally spamming your friends, right? But as we all know, on a real farm in a developing country, the threats are droughts, pests, and not being able to feed your family, right? So these threats make it difficult for farmers to learn what works, or sort of how to move from the left-hand side of this graph to the right-hand side, right? Another thing that makes it hard for farmers to learn is that there's also often a lot of variability between fields. Okay, so these blobs are the distributions of pH within villages in western and central Kenya. So each blob is a village, and so you can see that there's quite a lot of variability. The problem with that is that if your neighbor's fields are quite different from yours, it makes it harder for you to use her experience as a proxy for your own, right? One way to solve that is to give farmers personalized, targeted soil recommendations based on their soil deficiencies, right? So let's do a little experiment. Let's pretend that you're a farmer. You've been told that you should try putting lime on your field, and you want to know how that affects your maize yields, okay? And you do, you go out, buy the lime, you apply it, and then there's a drought. Or there's a flood. And you get no harvest at all, or something else happens that really diminishes your harvest. You're out the money, and you still don't know how lime affects your yields, right? So the basic thought behind our project is that there are lots and lots of things that affect farmers' yields. And for any given combination of weather variables, of soil quality variables, or of inputs, farmers have very few observations, right? So our thinking was, what if we could give farmers more observations, sort of experimentally? And so we're going to take a crop model that simulates maize yields. We're going to take soil samples on farmers' fields and initialize the model with those soil parameters. Then we're going to let farmers experiment with different inputs on a virtual field that's sort of corresponds to their own field, right? So in a crop model, that's picking some parameters, right? And then the model simulates some yields or the returns to those inputs. But we want to try to do that in a way that is a little more accessible to farmers. And this is just a mock-up that I did in PowerPoint, but something along these lines, an Android game that simulates yields for farmers and gives them a sense of how different inputs affect their returns, okay? So while we don't think that we'll be able to make farming child's play, we think that we might be able to use a game to at least boost farmers' ability to feed their children. Thanks.
The Global Center for Food Systems Innovation held a workshop at Michigan State University for researchers to discuss and discover creative ways to better feed the world.
This event is an opportunity for us to take a group of people who've been doing research in food systems and who really want to see their projects be successful.
This will provide the innovation grantees with the tools to be able to recognize the unique contributions that they bring to this field of food systems resilience, recognizing the unique contribution that they provide and being able to share that in a way that's relatable to a wide range of stakeholders.
I hope this group is connected in a way that they feel safe about talking about their research, and in a way that they don't feel safe when they're at a disciplinary conference.
This is hands-on. It is progressive, it is exciting. We have lightning talks, we have workshops where people are getting up and mixing about with people they've never met before from countries that they may only have ever heard of.
One thing they have in common is they have ideas that can help improve food security, improve food systems in the developing world. How they do that is running the gamut. They're doing stuff all over the place. Everything from cell phones for crop modeling and beekeeping to people who are interested in creating protein out of crickets and grasshoppers to feed to animals.
Everyone is coming together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. We are tapping faculty, students, and staff and what they bring to the table in terms of their STEM resources, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We take those abilities and give them purpose through the mission that is USAID and through what is eradicating global poverty.
Our mandate is not necessarily to do pure research. Our mandate is to bring innovation to the food system. We're more risk takers. We're not really worried about the end academic paper. We're worried about the idea that if you find an innovation, can research make it better?
We are expecting all of these teams to work towards, and we hope achieve, the goals they've set for themselves towards eradicating global poverty.
Everybody seems to be really engaged in this workshop. It's really great to see students and faculty and researchers all together working towards this common good.
Success for GCFSI is not necessarily that we have an innovation that all of a sudden allows food security in Africa to no longer become an issue. It's that we identify a process that will eventually lead to whatever food security innovation could be in Africa. We're not dictating what the technology is or what the theory should be. We're applying theory to allow a natural organic process for food security to grow and prosper in Africa. I want to hear the grantees say, we want to meet again. We want to get together again and do this again and talk about our research some more. That will prove to me that the research, this workshop was successful.
So I would invite you for some lunch so that we can eat these bugs. They are very delicious. So in our project, what we intend to do is to do the massive layering of grasshoppers or locusts, which are edible. So we develop a toolkit for layering them so that we can extract protein ingredients for feeding animals or for human food. So the reasons why we are doing these ones is that in Kenya and most of the African countries, we have a problem of food insecurity, especially the protein foods are expensive, and this contributes to food insecurity. Also, we have high poverty levels, and because of the arable land is shrinking, we have ruminant animals like the dairy cattle and beef cattle, which can be reared. They are becoming a challenge because the land is shrinking, and these ones is most small-scale farmers cannot do that. However, these small-scale farmers can rear the non-ruminant animals such as poultry. However, the cost of feeds hinders increased productivity and this keeps most of the farmers under a vicious cycle of poverty. Also, with increased populations and increase in living standards, we have the demand for protein-rich foods is increasing, and this in turn increases the demand for animal feeds, which has a serious environmental effect. Also, on the same, we have with the increase in populations, also with the climate change affecting fisheries, crop, and livestock yields. So in our project here, we are rearing these birds, which we intend to use them for food. So by producing food, we intend to solve the problem of food insecurity, and by providing the cheap or inexpensive animal feeds, farmers, the small-scale farmers, can improve their productivity of the non-ruminant livestock, and we anticipate that this is going to contribute to poverty alleviations. Also, with regard to the environment, by using the grasshoppers or the locusts, because they have a lower effect on the environment and they are less affected by the variables of the climate change, we also intend to build up on climate change resilience in Kenya and Africa. Thank you.
I'm here to talk to you today about anaerobic digestion systems in Uganda. So in Uganda, we have cows that eat things and poop, right? Just like many other places. We also have, we work a lot with schools. Lots of children, they also poop, eat and poop. And, but they also have energy needs, just like all of us throughout the world. We produce waste, we also have energy needs. So we work with a lot of groups in Uganda to build digesters. So digesters, you can see here, it's this big kind of concrete system, and you can see the outhouse in the back. So here we have outhouse and we have other waste that go into the digester, and we collect the biogas for cooking. We use it for, it reduces greenhouse gases, we can use the fertilizer. There's many, many benefits. For example, in the kitchen, we normally use firewood, really terrible air quality. When you shift to biogas, we can really improve the air quality for the people in the kitchens. We have fertilizer value, so we can put the effluent on crops to increase our crop production. Now these systems are great, we're putting them in all over, other people have put them in, so why am I here? We have problems. So you can see, for example, here, the effluent isn't being used properly and it's running off. It's creating additional problems, like adding to the pollution of this river. We give them stoves, right? Many people build a digester. Here's a stove to go along with it. Those stoves don't meet the needs, right? You're cooking for a huge amount of people at a school. That small stove is not going to do it. So in Uganda, we're working on many things to improve these systems. One being the solid liquid separation system. So it's a simple way to remove the solids. The solids can be handled easier. When you saw that other image, handling that with buckets in your hands, that's very undesirable. So in this case, we'll have the solids that people can apply or sell as a fertilizer product, and then we recirculate with a pump back to the beginning to mix with all of the other drier feedstocks going into the digester. So this is messy, but in this case, at least we don't have to touch as much of it as we used to. So you can see here, we mix it up, and now all of those drier feedstocks can flow into the digester. And we avoid having to carry jerry cans really, really far full of water. And if you've ever done that, it's very taxing. We're also looking at applying solids to the field, right? It's not enough to just say, use this as fertilizer. So we're looking at putting it in plots. Here we have a lot of researchers who work out in the fields every day. Research is much more difficult there. And they apply solids to the field to find out how much solid should we recommend people put on the field. Does it perform better or worse than other fertilizers that are available in the area? We're also looking at building dual fuel stoves. So those big stoves, we might not have enough biogas to cook a whole meal. So can we put biogas and firewood combined to at least get some use out of the biogas until we can improve performance? And we're really working at trying to get more gas production. So systems like this, like there's a biogas system here where there's many, many, many people, and they run out of biogas very commonly early in the day. So we're trying to improve biogas production in these systems through modifications. It's difficult, but I have a great team. We struggle many times. Here's us struggling to get a generator to work. Days and days, it was very frustrating, but exciting once we got it to work. So I have much confidence in my team to do all of this, who none of it would get done. I'm here talking to you, but they are all the people that do all the work. So thank you.
Just for beekeepers, but for Kenyan farmers, because in Kenya and in most of East Africa, farmers are beekeepers. Most of the, it's unlike here in the US and in Europe where we have specialized beekeepers. In Kenya and East Africa, a lot of farmers, many farmers, have a few hives of bees. So the true lifeline of this story, perhaps, especially of this initial innovation, is this fabulous little insect, one that you would not want to eat, John. This is not an insect for eating. This is the western honeybee, native to Africa, and it is we have a very long and profound relationship with honeybees, we humans. And this relationship is across cultures, and it's also quite old, even before modern humans were, it predates modern humans. In East Africa, we see this profound relationship played out in terms of food and calories, micronutrients for individuals, particularly children, during times of drought. It is a source of income generation. Lots of people sell honey. This is on the Mombasa Road. Honeybees are really critical pollinators of not only food crops, but also of wild crops, native plants that are used for wildlife food, birds, mammals, etc. Honey is also an important source of medicine, particularly for wound healing, and it's of cultural significance in many areas in Africa. Most recently, and interestingly, this innovation using honeybees as pest control. This is Lucy King's project to use lines of honeybee colonies to deter elephants from raiding crops in East Africa, or in Kenya in particular. There's been a lot of effort to try to increase honey yields and help farmers do a better job at beekeeping for many, many years. And this has really focused on the introduction of modern beekeeping methods and equipment that we use here in the US and in Europe. More recently, this introduction of the Kenyan top bar hive, but this has not worked. This has not worked. 95% of honey harvested in Kenya still comes from traditional log hives. So this introduction of this modern equipment has not worked for beekeepers or farmers trying to keep bees in East Africa. We have some data. We have lots of reasons why this might be so, but here's one data slide from an experiment that we've done at Seku. That shows that migratory swarms of bees, which is where beekeepers get their bees, do not prefer Kenyan top bar hives. Given the choices, they're much more likely to enter logs or even Langstroth hives, but not Kenyan top bar hives. In addition, here in the United States and in Europe, other places, we have so much access to information when it comes to bees and beekeeping. That's not the case in Africa, particularly again in East Africa, which is the area that I'm familiar with. A lot of times equipment is dropped on people, given to people, and it's just expected that they'll know how to use this modern equipment, which is definitely not the case. So our innovation and the work in Kitui County is to actually combine indigenous knowledge and practices with modern technology, particularly cell phones and satellite technology, to have access to information about the landscape and how it's impacting honeybees. So here, cell phones are actually ubiquitous, and which is amazing in Africa. We're collecting data. Beekeepers we GPS the hive locations. We're collecting data about these hives, lots of different information about these hives, which we will model and convert into evidence-based recommendations for beekeepers. So here's an example of that, where we have satellite imagery that can tell us what floral quality is like, coupled with information about precipitation, which will also impact the quality and quantity of nectar-producing plants. And through that, we can then actually form really nice, these are actually sites that we visited like 2 weeks ago. And we have already a map that can tell us what the quality of forage is and where beekeepers might likely get the highest value for their highest production and value out of their bees. We're also introducing this solar wax melter, very simple technology. We've done this with a couple of beekeepers already, and it's amazing. This is a product that is a byproduct of honey production that is essentially thrown away by beekeepers. And this can automatically be generated into significant income. There's already a market for this wax. We'd like to scale up and recognize that this technology, if it works, can be extended not only to other Kenyan counties, but other East African countries, and also to other crops and agricultural enterprises. And this is our very, very wonderful team of both Kenyans and US participants. And we could not do this project if it were not for our Kenyan partners. They are critical to making this work. So thank you very much.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So I want to start by saying that let's think for a moment about Rambo. And yeah, you're still in the right room. And the reason I'm talking about Rambo is because cassava is the Rambo of the food crops. Cassava is extremely resistant to harsh conditions, basically. So if it's too dry, the crop shuts down and waits for a couple of weeks or even a month for favorable conditions to come back. If it's too hot, its yields don't go down, at least not as quickly as they would go down for wheat, maize, or rice, for example. Under climate change, where you expect increased CO2 concentrations, some recent studies have shown that cassava yields can even double. So it's a perfect crop for climate change adaptation, and it also requires very little input. So anyone basically can grow it, and is ideal for resource-poor farmers. Cassava is grown in about 105 countries around the world. Most production comes from Africa, but significant amounts of production come from Asia and Latin America.
I'm Sangeeta Chopra from Indian Agriculture Research Institute. I'm working as a principal scientist there. They're called evaporative cold storage structures. And these are low-cost storage structures which we worked on these structures for the Indian farmers. Since the ambient temperatures are very high in India, they go as high as 110 Fahrenheit, and the humidities go as low down as 30%. And there's also a shortage of electrical energy. Energy is a resource, is a crunch for the farmers. So the farmers find it very difficult to store their produce. We worked on these low-cost storage structures where the principle was that the evaporation of water from the walls caused cooling. So we made a double wall kind of structure through which there was sandpacking. The sandpacking was kept wet, and the water evaporated from the walls. And as a result, even without the use of electrical energy, the temperatures could be lowered by 10 to 12 degrees. For short-term storage, he can put them in this EC room and it can stay for a few more days. These kind of structures have some limitations of the temperatures not lowering below the wet bulb temperatures. So we thought maybe we can make better structures. So these are the two innovations. Evaporative cold room, we call it the EC room. So the EC room with a different material and a different design so that a better EC room can be made. And another one retrofitted with the solar refrigeration system.
Good morning, everyone. This is a green cassava processing system, which intends to lead to zero waste and to help us small-scale processors to access high-value markets. And this system, which we are trying to come up with, is characterized by 5 elements. It looks into the system holistically instead of thinking of the product by itself. It also looks at a multiple product. That means we want to process every part of the cassava tuber into value-added products. and therefore to ensure efficient utilization of resources instead of just going with a certain part of the tuber and throw a lot of the rest. 3, this system looks into offering to the end user, the consumers, products with benefits which go beyond the nutritional requirement. I will explain that later. And fourthly, the system looks at integrating different sources of renewable energy to have a system which is energy self-sufficient. And finally, this system will end up with absolute no waste. Now we are talking about cassava, and we're focusing on the small-scale processes. The cassava value chain, first of all, cassava is a staple food, the third in Tanzania after maize and rice. And in Africa in general, it is a staple for more than 500 million people. It's a crop that's drought resistant, doing well in areas where many other crops do not do well. And therefore, it is synonymous to food security. However, the value chain of cassava has a number of challenges. One, especially with the beta variety, it has a lot of cyanide, and it requires a special approach in processing. If you mess up and you don't get it right, you're in trouble. And a number of people, as you can see there, have already been affected with cyanide poisoning. And these people have been completely devastated, completely crippled because of cyanide poisoning. This is in the southern part of Tanzania, where this has happened. And I was there trying to introduce this grating machine. This machine was invented by our institution in an attempt to solve this problem of cyanide poisoning, because the cassava is grated in the grater to produce kind of a paste, and then it's pressed in a press unit to remove most of the cyanide and the water. This intends actually to solve the problem of cyanide, but also the problem of bulkiness and the perishability. So that's one problem, cyanide problem. The second problem in cassava is a very perishable and a bulky product. And this poses a problem in handling, storage, and transportation. And the third problem in processing cassava, every single ton of cassava, of fresh cassava that's processed, ends producing 0.47 tons of waste. So almost 50% of the tuber is thrown as waste in terms of peels and the liquid waste from the press unit. Now, what are we up to? Therefore, in this grant, we'd like to introduce an efficient all-weather drying system, which integrates solar energy and biomass energy to solve the problem of bulkiness and perishability. So this is one element of this innovation. Second, this innovation intends to utilize the waste first to produce energy carriers. The waste will, first of all, the starch part will be used to produce bioethanol through fermentation, and this ethanol will be used to power the grater instead of petrol. And the rest of the waste that comes from fermentation will go to anaerobic digestion to produce biogas, which will be combined with the solar energy for drying. Furthermore, the fibrous part of the peels, we intend to convert them to polysaccharides, which are actually prebiotics, to use to fortify the cassava flour to produce a functional food product. And these prebiotics have been reported to have a lot of health benefits, including prevention of colonic cancer. They will enhance absorption of minerals in the body. They will promote the growth of good bacteria in the GIT. And also, they have been reported to lower levels of cholesterol and blood sugar. So those are the benefits that actually we want to give to consumers. Finally, the biogas residue will be used as biofertilizer to boost productivity in the field. They can be used for vegetable cultivation or in the cassava fields. This innovation, if it's successful, or for it to be successful, we are intending to work with the farmers. That means with the people on the ground, including farmers, extension officers, policymakers, and the processors. But for it to have a wider effect, we need it to be integrated in long-term government programs, and therefore we'd like to work with the policymakers from the very, very beginning. Thank you very much.